I've been able to overcome a lot of challenges, and there's been many things where I've fallen flat on my face, and it's been blooming hard. But I think that's what makes us special as human beings, that we were made to do something impactful in this world. And I really believe that we were made to with a special purpose. And I believe that when people know that and truly connect to that, then they will tap into that desire, that inner desire that can drive you forward and help you bounce back in the tough times.
Okay, Stella, we're here. We've made this happen. We were kind of referencing before we kicked off that we're busy people. I mean, would you agree with that? Are you getting sick of being so busy, or are you trying to just make it all work?
I feel like that's the theme of my conversation this week, because actually I've been speaking to a couple of other people that I'm really close to. They've both said, I want to catch up, but I don't want to disturb you because you're really busy. And I actually stopped them and I said, this is one of the things that I'm struggling with, is this perception that just because I do this and I have this kind of life and running a business and all of that there's an immediate assumption that I'm busy. And while I am, I really want people to know that for my family and for the people that mean the most to me and for those important missions, I will make time. Yeah.
Well, it's a very good distinction, because just because we're busy, it does not mean we can't make time. And I guess that's what people think, right? Like we get into a certain amount of autopilot where we're on. And I like what you're saying, because you're saying kind of like, hey man, if it gets too much or we're missing base too much, we've got to actually action it. Hey, and there's something kind of nice about that I think we kind of forget in the busyness. Because business, I don't know how you feel, but busyness can be a bit hypnotic too. It can keep you, kind of flowing and feeling, I guess, should we just acknowledge the pandemic, that plenty of us have felt probably a little bit of meaning in having something to do? Would you kind of think that's roughly right?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I testify to falling into that trap of that hypnosis, as you say, around the busyness, because there is a sense of feeling like in the busyness you're doing the mahi and it feels productive. I read somewhere just recently that it's about the right kind of busy. It's about the right kind of busy. And even at this age, I'm still trying to get out of those traps and not fall into the rhythm of the rat race busyness. I've got a really good friend that I really respect, Norma Sewell from 37 Hertz, and her and I were talking about that having that conversation over the weekend, and I really admire her because she purposely rests and places well-being at the top of her agenda. And I said to her this weekend, how do you do that? You need to show me. I need someone to show me, because at the moment I enjoy reading her little wellness posts and makes me feel good. But I'm definitely one of those people that are trapped in the rat race busyness, and I'm trying to unpack from that and learn skills and prioritize, really.
And I guess part of it's a high trust game doing that, right? Because you have to trust that people around you acknowledge that the value is not in always us running around, is not in all of us just like delivering and we got this and we got that. It's something about like almost like a proper relationship, that you need downtime, that you need to relax. But I can't find a way to consciously acknowledge that in real time. It's real hard to put a value to that short term, isn't it? It's much easier to say, if I just squeeze this in here and do that there, that'll help me down the road. So there's something there's something there, and I'm not sure how we really articulate it, but I do hope that this conversation keeps flowing, this one about the rat race, or as I'm thinking at the moment, there's a lot of fight or flight. There's a lot of panic, and there's energy in that and power in that. But, nature intended us to kind of be sometimes in fight or flight to get away from danger, but then to calm down. And I think it's that calm down bit which we are totally not thinking about, right?
Well, as someone who's, a Christian, and even God, the way he designed the 7 days, even God had a rest. and I have to remind myself about that, because often I get myself, I love my work and I love what I do. And when you love what you do, you easily fall into the trap of doing the mahi 24/7, and you have, and it's not until you die ugly on your couch that you realize, I haven't allowed time for rest. And as I said, this is one of my biggest battles at the moment, is learning to prioritize rest, to be okay with the fact that if you rest or if you stop, that the world's not going to end, that, the world's not going to crumble, your clients are not going to run away. And it's also about having the skills to delegate well to the people around you. And I just, most of the time, I just expect people to read my mind, Will. I mean, how hard is that?
I'm sure there's a book in that somewhere. Stella,
read my mind.
Yeah, why can't you read my mind? Hey, I just also want to acknowledge that, this is, national television, and we're up here talking about this stuff. How cool is that, right? That's the change, is that we don't have to be our brands or our messaging, is that we can just stumble across that, it takes time, and even God took a day to rest. So next time you feel all empowered to push yourself right to the edge, just remember that metaphorically or physically, the highest thing would even rest, which probably says more about that, right? Stella, you mentioned also, well, you kind of said, when you get caught up in what you do, how do you describe what you do in your words?
Beautiful chaos.
That's the name of this podcast.
I actually have coined that term, and that's actually a thing that I specialize in, is beautiful chaos. And it's that space where it's a magical space, because often the greatest magic that I make is in that space where ideas are still being formed but not quite landed on, and you've got to do it at the same time. And a number of my projects and a number of things I do is about helping clients to make sense of the opportunity, and sometimes we have time to methodically work through those things, and a lot of times we're like, hey, let's do this, right? Let's assemble a cast and crew tomorrow morning to film COVID bulletins in the languages. It's never been done before, and and it's that space of beautiful chaos.
And okay, so when did you learn that you could beautifully guide the chaos? How does one set out? Because one of the things that I love is that people who wouldn't have come across our different fields of engagement, because I do want to say that Pasifika and Māori and all of our people can do anything they want, right? And that's sometimes not always said. When I see a lot of, and I'm very careful, but when I see a lot of the advertising and stuff, it's get a trade, get a full-time job, but hey, hold on a minute, dream as well. And I feel like that's kind of why I like chatting to you. We spend a bit of time dreaming about stuff, but we have these skills to go out and make it. So what is that skill that allows you to guide that chaos?
It's creativity. Creativity. It's that whole process of being able to and problem solving, and it's that whole space of being able to hear what your clients want to achieve. For those of you who don't who don't know me, which is probably a whole lot of you, I run a marketing, creative, and content agency, and often what we do is we sit down with our clients and we help them figure out how they're going to achieve their marketing goals or express their brand story and all of that. And before we even get to the sexy stuff of making the video content, it really is that space of helping your client to understand what it is they want to achieve, problem solve that, because sometimes clients walk in and say they want X, Y, and Z, and after I've spoken with them and helped them to problem solve the situation to point them to X, Y, and Z, they're like, wow, Stella, how did you explained it so well? I never thought about it like that. Can I have a copy of your stickman drawing? And I think that was the most empowering thing, and it's only happened in the last couple of years while I was running the studio out in MIT, where I actually started embracing my scribbles as a real piece of intellectual property of value. And often what I'll do is I'll sit there when my clients are talking about what they want to do. I draw pictures and I kind of do flow diagrams, and then I'll say to them, this is what I mean, and then I'll explain that. And every time I do that, generally I have an aha moment with the people that I speak with. And now I just embrace my drawings. In fact, yesterday I was speaking to my designer about playing around with this big iPad, the one that you can draw on with a pen, because I want to digitize what I draw. And I'm not an artist, but I'm a pretty good stickman drawer and can make sense of conversation and visual format. Yeah.
Wow, that's so interesting, because you talk about marketing and, content, and everyone thinks, you got to have 4K and everything, but stickman is important too. And
Stickman is important.
That's hilariously awesome. And
yeah.
Sorry, go.
I was going to say that, in a real, fancy, high-end agency, they have that dedicated designer who would do the storyboard and all of that. But as I said, the stickman wins in my books.
I love it. Absolutely.
It's enough. Yeah.
And it's actually more than enough, because not many people will come out and say that's where the value is. And I think that's where I'm trying to dig at, is that we get hypnotized by the end product, and wow, but it's always up the front, like everything else. Stella, we'll take a quick break, and when we get back, I'd love to just talk a little bit more about this theme we're on, but also to let's go back a little bit to young Stella, what you wanted to be, what you wanted to do. Stay right there, folks. Back in just a sec. Okay, back with Stella. Stella, what did you want to be when you grew up? And I don't mean that as like, oh man, everyone asks me that. Did you really kind of have vision of, and an idea of what you wanted to be?
I totally did.
Really?
I wanted to be I wanted to be a TV presenter when I was young, and I would fantasize about being like the next What Now presenter, or some of the other shows, not Play School, but I forgot what Play School was. Yeah, but I from an early age, I was really interested in that line of work. Yeah.
And what did the family think? Was this something everyone was like, it's a phase, or, we're going to back you?
These are the kinds of conversations we never had in the household. Basically the nature of life and growing up as a traditional, in traditional Samoan household was you go to school, you come home, you do the loto, you do your prayers, you have dinner, do your homework, and then it's good night. Or if we had church practice, we go to church practice. But I have literally no memory of ever sitting down with my parents and having a conversation about my ambitions in life. And so often they were internal thoughts that just remained in my head. Yeah.
And I guess, and I don't want to get too personal, but did you was there any conscious effort to change that when it was your turn to be a parent?
Definitely. Definitely. There was, when I was growing up, my parents, the main goal for them was that we finish school, that we, university was like a bonus. But the main thing for mum and dad is they didn't want us to be like in a factory job. They wanted us to be in an office job and actually, being a teacher or just working in the office, anywhere except for a factory was what mum and dad wanted for us. And now with my kids, I kind of have conversations with them about what they want, but I'm also okay about them experimenting with different things. And my 18-year-old at the moment is started his journey, and he's talked to me about lots of different things he wants to be, and I'm like, okay, well, make sure you finish this part. Once you do that, if it's not for you, let's go and experiment there. And I'm really huge on the whole experimenting while you're young, because in that way you can get some of the stuff out of your system. And the world is such that no longer is it like the thing to work in a job for 20 years as well. You can jump around, but I just want my kids to have fulfillment and happiness and feel called to what they're doing, and to honor and serve wherever they're working, or if they're in business, to do that well. Yeah.
Isn't it interesting? Because I talk about this a lot with the guests on this podcast, where, what was the goal of our parents that came over, or their parents, or our, even go back as far as the early navigators? What were we striving for when we were going off on a journey? And I guess some of the answer is the journey itself, that you have to explore. But there's a certain amount of tension, and maybe we've already highlighted in this podcast, like safety versus certainty. And I know that there's been a bit of a push to pick the safe option. And I guess the challenge is, what's the acceptable amount of risk, right? And I don't think for anyone it's that easy to balance, but I guess what you're hearing is, if you can get the experimenting done a bit younger, you have a chance to change and pivot.
Yeah, definitely. But like even as I'm in my 40s now, and as I said, I think that it's more accepting these days, even in your 40s or your 50s, to completely pivot into a different direction. Like I've heard a lot of stories of people one person who was like a really fantastic public servant, who hung up his hat there and decided to go and be a teacher, and he's doing great things there, and he's a mature man. And I thought, wow, he made that decision quite late in life, but it was what he desired to do, to feel like he was doing something meaningful, at that point in his life. And I guess the thing is like, no matter where you are and what you're doing, my whole philosophy is to just do it with your whole heart and 100% soak up that moment in time and your experience there, and take from that. I love that. Like, one of the things I've been waiting to do a podcast with you, we've talked about it for a few years, and I don't know if you do a lot of podcasts, but I definitely think, how can I say this? Like, so, your point where you're talking and then you're realizing a point. I think the beauty of a podcast is you can stay on that point, like no one minds us holding on that. And I love that moment. It's like, that's how I try and articulate a podcast. A podcast isn't a radio show or a television show, even though we are on TV. It's this other space, like kind of like we're looking at a campfire, and you don't have to directly think I'm answering you. It's like this nice little back and forth. I even like that there's a bit of chaos happening in your background. There's life happening. We are not like in a TV studio and people in our ear or auto cue. Real life's happening. So I definitely appreciate that. So okay, so you had these ideas as a youngster about what now. What was your version of actioning that? Well, I was like, I made a point to kind of, join the debating club. I thought, well, I better develop my speaking skills. I was in debating club. I did speeches. The school I was at, Macaulay, a great school. At the time I was there, they didn't really have like a dedicated class to like journalism or anything like that. And by the time I left school, I applied for AUT's journalism school, which back then was a real elite kind of opportunity of like, I think it was like 20 people from all of New Zealand. I didn't get in, and which I was really disappointed. I was really crushed by that and felt like the oppression of like living in South Auckland and missing out because I didn't, I didn't feel like I had everything that I needed to prove that I could get in. And I remember feeling really kind of like, oh, if I went to a different school that had like these topics or these subjects, I might have been able to get into it, or if I had these experiences. But it is what it is, and it wasn't meant to be. And I went across the road to Auckland University and enrolled in commerce to study accounting.
That's how you dealt with your anger.
Totally. I decided, I'll go and school myself up on the accounting world, but that didn't go very well.
Oh, that's funny. I mean, yeah, look, and you probably, we're living that in real time, but there might have been a case of, was it meant to be that I didn't get in? And what, I guess, were you looking for a little bit of certainty when you enrolled in the commerce stuff, or were you just like, oh, well, they don't offer the course I want, I've got to study something?
Yeah, I mean, once I got declined from that, I felt like, oh, that was the end. Like, that was it. I've missed my opportunity, because it's not like how it is now, where young people, man, they have so much opportunity around them. And, back then it was like, okay, if I don't get onto this course, that's it. I have no pathway into this. At the time, that was my thinking. So yeah, by the time I went across to the school in commerce, I just decided, look, I'll just do something in business, accounting, because at the time I was helping my dad. I had been supporting my dad in running our family business, which was the Otara Billiard Saloons in Otara.
Wow, cool.
Yeah. And Dad bought that with his humble savings against my mother's wishes when we just started high school. So I'd been helping Dad with the family business since I was like 12, like 13. And I was like his little right-hand man, helping him with that. So I kind of thought, well, I can't do my journalism. My parents' other plan was to wed me to go and become a priest, marry Feifei Ao and go and serve at Malua College. That didn't happen either. Yeah, and so as I said, I thought maybe I'll pursue something in business. And I loosely didn't really kind of have any clear ideas, but thought it was better than staying at home.
I love it. Yeah. So, well, look, we'll go to one more break. And I guess, Stella, I always think when we kind of wind up for the break, what's next? And so I want to come back and talk about what was next for you after you studied, but with our eye and ear on an idea of what are some of the things that translate into today, because we have a habit of people of seeing the final product, and I'm really big on making sure it isn't that I just became awesome, that there was a process through it. And sometimes it's as simple as sharing that process, to others about, here's some things I thought about. And I think what happens when you don't say, you need to think about these things, is when you hear others process it, it helps you just put it in the back of your mind and give you these seeds to grow. So stay with us, Stella. Stay with us, folks. Back in just one tick. Okay, we talked a bit about, I love that we get to call our AUT, well, in a nice way, because they didn't pick you, that's their fault. So you went and did business. How long was that? And when you came out, was it like easy to find work?
Well, there goes another part of my storyboard, because I transferred over to Auckland Uni, and I actually, at the end of my first year of uni, I actually fell pregnant, and to my parents' horror, and at the time, that moment in my life was really frowned upon. I ended up having to quit school for a little while, and be a young mother, and got married really young, and transferred my studies over to MIT to continue pursuing my business degree. But when I transferred over to MIT, they had a communications degree come out. And I checked it out, and I remember going to the first PR class and thinking, what's public relations? And I remember sitting through that class and thinking, oh my gosh, I could totally do this. So here I was, a young person who had fantasized as a young girl about being a TV presenter on TV, now on the other side of communication, which is PR. And I had no idea that there was this whole other world. And so that was the beginning of my career into communications. And here I am, some 20 years later, running my own marketing, communications, and content business, and it's been epic.
Did you ever, how you said there was this but an absence of this communication about young Stella, what she wants to do and all of this stuff? Did you ever get a chance to sit down with family and kind of say, hey, look, it works out, did mum or dad or whoever was around, did they get to celebrate? Do they celebrate with you in this, you were pivotal in our Pasifika comms during COVID, right? We couldn't catch up. The only way we could touch base was through what we're doing. And it's like life made you ready for that moment.
Totally. I mean, to your first question, did we sit down at that moment in my life? I mean, I was brought up with the generation of Pacific people of the 80s and 90s who were had the parents where it was you had to suck it up and push through, and you make life is what you make it. So I never sat down with my parents to discuss options. I was literally a young mum, married young, finding my way in life, and backing myself. I can say that now, that I was backing myself. I didn't know that's what I was doing back then. I just had a real desire to do more than what I was doing at the time, which was being a young mum and studying. I had a deep desire for something, and I was on that quest to find that something. And this is how I evolved in my journey. And I've had heaps of ups and downs, but I can say that looking back now, everything happened for a reason. I'm really, really stoked.
As part of the lesson that, and it's not a very nice one actually, it's you've just got to stay in the game long enough so you can look back and either tie that narrative together, because there's no way of, it doesn't matter what you can do in the real time. You've just one of the things I think that's pivotal to the study I've done in neuroscience, for example, is you literally have to move forward. If you don't, your eyes don't get the signal of things passing them. If they don't get the signal of that, they can't tell the rest of the body what to do. They can't release the right chemicals. It's like this genius inbuilt, gift that we have. And I sometimes think, what is it about this world where we say things like mental health, but I always think, what does that mean? What does that really mean? You talk about it like it's a microphone, but you can't grab it or touch it. You can feel it, but it comes in waves. And I think, man, I guess that's what I'm hearing from you. In that moment, you just had to kind of keep going, keep dreaming, keep thinking, keep problem solving.
Keep dreaming, I would say. I mean, I'm a mother of 6 kids. I'm remarried. I've been through some really, really tough times as a young woman, and just someone trying to find their way through life. I've experienced divorce, and not only did I get pregnant young, then I was the first person in my family to get divorced and all of that. And there's all that the stigma that comes with culture and tradition and all those disappointments that I feel like it was those things that I really grappled that were really hard for me. But by the grace of God and this innate, like, deep desire to just dream and keep pushing forward, as you say, I've been able to overcome a lot of challenges. And there's been many things where I've fallen flat on my face and it's been blooming hard. But I think that's what makes us special as human beings, that we were made to do something impactful in this world. And I really believe that we were made to with a special purpose. And I believe that when people know that and truly connect to that, then they will tap into that desire, that inner desire that can drive you forward and help you bounce back in the tough times. I make it sound like I'm a superwoman, but no, I've actually been really fortunate to have some really amazing, beautiful people in my family, and with my husband, and good friends, and a lot of great cheerleaders who've helped propel me forward. But I do think for me that it's helped that I have I'm a really optimistic person, and I have a real dreamer mind. Yeah.
Well, I like that, we're kind of humble and polite to say that I'm not a superhero, but there are moments where you had to be your own superhero, that you had to be enough, right? And I guess that's the message that I also want to share, is that we don't often hear that in the people we follow and the people that we look up to, is like, yes, okay, we acknowledge there's a few waves here and there, but like, those waves are tough and they smash you, and in the real time it feels like that's it. And I kind of think that's why people want to stay away from that. But isn't it interesting, there's a tension between, you had to kind of go through that to learn the experience, and you would never advocate for anyone to go through that, but how do you, that's the question I have about life. Why is it that you need that?
I love, there's this book, I haven't read it, but I bumped into it during COVID through a Zoom session I was doing with some other business women. And there's a book that is called The Obstacle is the Way. The Obstacle is the Way, which for me, I caught onto that saying, because we have to go through the hard times. We have to look at obstacles front on and confront them in order to progress to those magical moments in our lives, or to those moments in our lives where, like, oh gosh, that was totally not as hard as I thought, or oh my goodness, I didn't know I could do that, or wow, look at the way, because I did this, I impacted that person's life. And I think if people could take that on board a bit more, that when life is not, life is a journey, and it's not this happiness at the end. It's about engaging in those moments along the way, and embracing the good and embracing the bad, and you learn from all those moments.
It's needed right now, what you're talking. We get, it's like information sometimes isn't enough. You've still got to find meaning in your day. And I mean, that's what I really like when I first met you, is that's something I can't ever say to you, but there's a feeling you get from people, it's like, there's something kind of like, we're doing this, yes, we're acknowledging that it's tough, and we'll half make it up, but the like my thing at the moment is saying, look, my intent is rock solid. I can promise that, but everything else might be a bit shaky, but I will fail or hurt you, but not entirely on purpose. I won't do it as a chess move. That's really important for me, because I didn't know people do that. This is part of my, I won't say burden, but things I'm learning in life is I had like 5 Stellas around me, right, who have done it all and guided young William. But young William grew up through, beautiful binoculars, love hearts everywhere. And when I realized there's some darkness in the world, boy, it hurt. Because why can't everything be fair? Why can't it be lovely all the time? So
Yeah.
My late 30s and early 40s are trying to better acknowledge that, and I love that you're talking about this. Okay, let's go one more break, Stella. Come back and let's dare to dream for those who maybe have forgotten. I'd love to just unpack some strategies and tools you use on the days you've got to get through, where you got to put a bit more in, stuff like that. So stay with us, Stella. Stay with us, folks. Back in just a tick. We've had a pretty deep podcast. I knew we would. So, look, I'll say it gently, but there's obviously lots of people out there hurting, and I want to talk to them through you and your story. And Stella, are there routines you follow or have learned over the years that, let's just say, the chips are down? What's your go-tos so that you can even if it's putting the car in neutral, we're not going to go forward or back. We just stop.
Right. Well, when I'm rock bottom, try not to share like really bad habits. Yeah. Like the chocolate. I like to eat chocolate, and I love to go and eat.
Yeah, and that's what you're going to see at the start of the podcast, the little promo.
Yes. But I think, there's been moments where it just hits me smack bang in the face. And I just feel my whole emotional state just crashing. And then I go somewhere, I find somewhere quiet, whether it's in the car that I'm in, or whether it's in my office, or if I'm at a work thing or something like that. Something that I find really good, which will be something that you really like, Will, is I've started breathing. Like breathing exercises, and I just breathe in, and I pray. And I pray as I do that, and I remember that as I'm breathing in the air, I remember that it's the breath of life that God gives. Similar concepts to Māori, to our Māori stuff, and I breathe, and it helps to slow me down. And then I I've started this practice of what I say, be kind to myself, being kind to myself, where I'm like, it's okay, Stella. What's the worst thing that could happen if you don't meet that deadline, or if you stuffed up at work? Because this is the challenge of being a perfectionist and someone that's got big grand ideas, and you fall short of it, even though, say, for example, your client might love it, or your client was disappointed or whatever, and you fall short of that. People like that, like me, are really hard on ourselves, We're really hard on ourselves, and so we need to also do the opposite. If we beat ourselves up, we actually need to also reaffirm and speak words to ourselves around, "You're awesome, Stella. You've had a stink moment, but you're going to get up from this. You're going to learn from it. You're going to confront it. You're going to be accountable for it." And then I just speak words to myself. And then I might listen to some music that really inspires me. Aside from that, that good old coffee and cake with the girlfriend or the husband always goes down well. But I would say those are the things that that I do. And that self-talk, that self-talk, it's so powerful. I so believe in the power of words.
Yeah, well, we do, because we can easily talk negatively to ourselves, and we can talk ourselves into the pit. And one of the things I've, kind of learned through the breathing, and the breathing's tied into the neurology, and that's why I referenced that. But we have these loops in our brain, and our brain makes these loops, and then it thinks that, what you put in there is what you want. So it literally makes shortcuts. And it was explained to me that you can do this thing where you create a rut, and you think about it, and then if you can imagine you're digging into a rut, it gets too deep and you can't get out. And I think that we get ourselves there. So one of the ways that the neuroscience talk about is when you breathe slower, you actually start breaking those connections, when you might not be able to take things out of your past, but you can add things in. So that's talking about it's okay, and I think in public life, like, oh, that's a bit, manas or shame, but what shame is, like getting to the edge of the abyss and not being able to find your way back, that is a shame. And so I'm a believer that, like, it's about us, and we've done it tonight, right? We've done it today by talking about this, because there won't be a heap of people on TV trying to be vulnerable like us or like you. Like, I'm always being vulnerable, but you have, like, you work at a really high level. So for you to come here and not promote and talk about the wins, and we are talking about the wins, but I like that you've taken us somewhere, and it just means a lot. If it's just one podcast or one bit of TV out of all of the plethora of, bad news and CNN and all of this stuff, it's like,
absolutely. I also visualize, positive visualization, and when I get off track or something, or if I feel like, frustrated with that, then I try and remember, like, what I saw, or I'll pull out my scribbles and look at my scribbles, or I pull out my journals and I'll read some of the things that I've written to myself for about a moment, and then I'm like, oh, that wasn't so bad. I've been there. How did I deal with it again last time? That's awesome.
Who's inspiring you at the moment? I get kind of fascinated with this idea of bubbles, and we've talked about stay in your bubble, but I want to, like, look out of it sometimes, and I love exposing myself. Like I think about ourselves like we have like an immune system. If you don't expose yourself, you're just gonna get sick really easy. So what's some things you could share about what's inspiring you, or things that where you go to find inspiration, just so others can be like, oh, I'm going to add that to my list?
Oh gosh, well. When you said who's been inspiring me lately, do you know what? Young people have been inspiring me lately, and I say that because I have also been really frustrated with young people. and the young people's worldview. I sound like a grandmother, but I've been having some really awesome conversations with young people in my world, and I had a really interesting conversation with a particular young lady in my circle, and her worldview just blew my mind, and she taught me something in that conversation, and she's a Pacific young woman, and she's had the opportunity to do really amazing things and work and study overseas, and had come back to New Zealand as a result of COVID, and I've had the opportunity to work with her, and it was so interesting because she's Samoan and raised traditional like me, yet her view of the world and her Pacificness was very inspiring. Like, what I'm trying to say is that when the way I grew up was, I grew up with this view of, as a Pacific person, having to prove myself. And I think I've pretty much passed that point of feeling like, trying to prove your Pacificness. But I love how young people, they're just going out to the world and just wanting to be their best self, and being Pacific is part of that. Whereas sometimes I feel like I fall into the trap where it's like, I can get so fixated on my Pacificness that I forget that I exist in this world, and actually I'm good enough to be in the world. Do you know what I mean? And my ideas are good enough to be in the world and in other spaces aside from my Pacific world. So I feel like, even though I've known that, I felt like I had a moment where my Pacific bubble was popped a little bit, and I was challenged by this young person to say, Stella, I've worked around these places, and do you know that you're just as brilliant as some of the people that I've worked with around the world? And I was like, oh, thanks. But, you know, young people are just owning it, just owning their space in the world without necessarily being tied down by the fact that, you know, they're from South Auckland, they're from Pacific. Oh, there's definitely people still stuck there, but I'm saying more of our young people are just like, I'm going out there into the big wide world and just being awesome, period, just for who I am.
That's
you know? Yeah. And whilst I love being Pacific, and that's a massive part of who I am, I believe that more of us Pacific people just need to own being the best that we can be in this world. And my Pacificness is a part of that, not the be all and end all. Because I think that has become limiting for myself and limited my dreams for myself and my business. So that's my goal, is to embrace some of that young, suave vision for my journey ahead.
I love it. That's such a cool way to end. We just blew through our hour. I told you it'd go quick. Look, Stella, I want to thank you for joining us on the podcast and sharing a little bit about your story and just kind of like, you know, we didn't really have a topic, but we did, and that's exactly the space I love being. You know, it's like, that's life, hey? It's like
beautiful chaos.
Exactly, beautiful chaos. Where can people follow you, follow the journey, or reach out? You know, this goes up and down the country, so there's plenty of people who live outside our bubble, and if they want to connect with, you know, yourself and the services you provide, how can they do that?
Yeah, I'm really easy to contact. You can message me at my Facebook, Stella Muller, or email me at stella@brightsunday.co.nz.
Boom, I love that. Bit of selling on the end too. Stella, as always, it's been awesome to get to know you over the years and, you know, work with you, and let's keep talking because there's plenty more that we can dig into. But, you know, just on behalf of me and, you know, all the audience, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Will, for having me on board.